Look at a field of yellow long enough. Then let your eyes drift to blue. Nothing on the canvas has changed, and yet the yellow seems to catch fire, warmer, brighter, lit from somewhere behind the pigment. That light was never mixed on a palette. Part of it was built inside you in less time than it takes to blink. Your nervous system does this constantly, and it never asks permission. It sharpens edges that are actually soft. It invents glow where there is only paint. It finishes paintings the artist never technically completed. Most pictures accept this quietly, the way a whisper accepts an empty room. One painter learned to conduct it. He discovered that if he chose his colors with enough precision, he wouldn't need to paint emotion directly. He could simply arrange the conditions under which your own eyes would manufacture it for him. Which means the painting you remember as blazing, restless, alive, may never have moved at all. You moved. Decades before neuroscience had the instruments to explain why complementary colors seem to vibrate against each other, this painter was already composing canvases that behaved as if he'd read the results in advance. His real subject was never the wheat field or the café or the starlit sky. It was the eye standing in front of them. By the end of this film, you won't be able to walk past one of his paintings without wondering the same unsettling thing. How much of what you just felt did he actually paint? And how much did you? Seeing feels effortless, which is exactly why no one questions it. Light enters the eye, an image forms, the brain records it. That's the story most people carry around without ever examining it. A camera model of vision. It's wrong. Vision isn't a recording. It's a running argument. Before you're even conscious of what you're looking at, your visual system is already comparing one patch of color against its neighbors, exaggerating some differences and erasing others. It never asks, "What color is this?" It asks, "What color is this compared to what's next to it?" That single substitution changes everything downstream. The man who first proved it wasn't a painter, and he wasn't trying to be. Michel Eugène Chevreul was a chemist employed at the Gobelin tapestry works in Paris, where weavers kept bringing him the same complaint. Two threads, dyed from the exact same batch, looked like two different colors depending on what was woven beside them. The dye hadn't changed. The eye had. Chevreul spent years chasing the mechanism behind that complaint, and in 1839 he published the answer. No color is ever perceived in isolation. Every color is altered by whatever surrounds it. Place blue beside yellow, and both intensify. Place red beside green, and something closer to friction appears. He called it the law of simultaneous contrast. The paint stays still. The perception doesn't. Chevreul's findings might have stayed inside textile workshops if not for Charles Blanc. a critic who translated the chemistry into a language artists could actually use. A grammar of color relationships, not color choices. Vincent van Gogh read Blanc closely, and something in it seems to have reorganized how he thought about painting entirely. His letters to his brother Theo return again and again to the idea that colors don't simply sit beside each other. They act on each other, provoke each other, sometimes attack each other. For Van Gogh, color stopped being decoration and became something closer to voltage. He'd found a lever most painters didn't know existed, the discovery that he didn't need louder pigment to create a brighter painting. He needed a more dangerous relationship between two ordinary ones. That's the quiet mechanism behind the glow people describe standing in front of his work. A glow no conservator has ever found in the paint itself, because it isn't in the paint. It happens in the gap between two colors, a gap your own visual system rushes in to fill before you're even aware you've done it. Once you understand that your brain is doing part of the labor, a Van Gogh canvas stops being a surface. It becomes an instruction. And there's one room where Van Gogh followed that instruction all the way to its most hostile conclusion, where he stopped choosing colors that agreed with each other and started choosing colors built to fight. Some paintings are remembered for their beauty. This one is remembered for how it feels to stand inside it. The Night Café, painted in Arles in September 1888, shows nothing dramatic on its surface. A billiard hall, a handful of loiterers, lamps. But look at the color choices, and the room stops sitting still. Red walls pressed against a green billiard table. Yellow lamplight spreading in halos that seem too hot for their bulbs. The longer you stay with it, the less stable it feels. The red seems to advance toward you. The green refuses to recede. The two colors seem to be arguing, and neither is winning. This wasn't instinct. It was intent. In a letter to Theo, Van Gogh wrote that he'd tried to express, through red and green, what he called the terrible passions of humanity. Read that sentence carefully, and it reveals something most viewers miss. He wasn't describing the cafe as it looked. He was engineering how it would feel to stand inside it. That's a different kind of question than the one most painters ask. Not what colors belong in this room, but which pairing of colors will make a stranger's nervous system feel unease before that stranger has read a single word of context. The answer wasn't harmony, it was opposition. Complementary colors, placed side by side, don't simply coexist. They compete. Each one makes its neighbor look more saturated than it physically is, without a single new pigment added to the canvas. Your own eyes supply the amplification. More than a century later, vision scientist Margaret Livingstone offered part of the explanation modern neuroscience can provide. The visual system doesn't process color and brightness through the same channel. And when two complementary colors of similar brightness sit next to each other, the boundary between them can start to look unstable, almost as if it's shimmering. Nothing on the canvas moves. The movement is happening in your visual cortex. You can't switch it off by deciding to. Your visual system reaches its verdict before your conscious mind is even in the room. Which explains something people rarely think to ask. Why photographs of Van Gogh's work, even excellent ones, tend to feel muted compared to the original. A screen can copy the pigment. It struggles to copy the relationship, the exact adjacency, the precise boundary where two colors meet and start their quiet argument. Stand in front of the real canvas, and that argument is still running over a century after the last brushstroke dried. Because Van Gogh was never only painting cafes, or wheat fields, or a sky full of stars. He was painting the conditions under which a stranger's perception would begin to unravel a little, on schedule, every single time. The canvas was half the artwork. The other half was already installed behind your eyes, waiting. You leave the museum. The painting stays on the wall. That's the assumption anyway. But something travels home with you that isn't quite memory. Hours later, you can still feel the color, not recall it, feel it, the way a room's temperature stays with you after you've left it. That lingering sensation is a confession. You were never a passive observer in front of that canvas. You were a collaborator, and you didn't apply for the job. Every glow, every tremor of red against green, every impossible warmth in a field of yellow, none of it arrived on the canvas fully formed. Pigment made the offer. Your nervous system accepted it. That may be the real reason certain paintings hit harder than their subject matter should allow. Not because they depict something extraordinary, a cafe, a field, a sky, but because they quietly borrow the very machinery you used to build reality in the first place, and put it to work for a few minutes. Van Gogh understood this instinctively, decades before science had the vocabulary to confirm it. He didn't just place colors next to each other. He staged an encounter and left you standing at the center of it. That encounter hasn't ended. It's still running in every museum where one of his canvases hangs, every time a stranger stops walking and doesn't know why. So the next time you stand in front of one of those blazing yellows, or a red wall pressed against a green table that won't sit still, remember what you now know. Part of that light was never in the paint. Part of that motion was never in the brushstroke. And the final mark on the canvas, the one that finishes the painting, was never made by Van Gogh at all. It's being made right now. By you.